Right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. After the break, we are going to talk about Scientology. If there is a Scientologist out there that would like to give his or her opinion after hearing Pete Griffiths escaping Scientology, then join us now. John is there. He will take your calls. There's an empty switchboard at this second in time. Give us a ring. It's Radio City 2. It's Radio City Talk.
Liverpool's biggest after-hours talk show, Late Night City, with Pete Price on Radio City 2. Call now on 0151 708 1059.
Radio City 2.
Late Night City, Beyond the Dark.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know I do a million interviews. This is the biggest show outside London. It's been the biggest talk show outside London for many, many years. And every so often we get a guest that I get excited about. This is going to be an adventure. This is a blank piece of paper with a gentleman at the other end of the phone, and we're going to talk to him and find out everything. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking to Peter Griffiths about being an ex-Scientologist. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Peter.
Thank you, first of all, for joining me.
You're more than welcome.
Tell me who you are before we talk about Scientology.
Well, I prefer Pete to Peter.
Right.
My mum calls me Peter, but she might be listening. So hi, Mum.
I'm the same. Everyone calls me Pete, and it's
all right.
Peter.
Okay. Not that it really matters. I got involved with the organisation some years ago, back in 1987, in England. My brother was doing it. My ex-wife started doing it. So it seemed pretty harmless. And of course, they don't tell you, they don't say, hey, come and join our cult. They say, oh, well, yes, we have this self-improvement technique. And you buy into that. So that's how I got involved with the whole thing. With regards to who I am, I haven't got a clue who I am.
Well, who were you before the cult?
Well, in my Liverpool days, I played in a band, and then I left Liverpool, met my ex-wife, we got married, and we just kind of jobbed around, worked around the place. Weren't particularly looking for anything, but you know how when you're younger, you walk around with your eyes wide open, taking whatever comes, and that's exactly what we did,
What band were you in?
They were called the Spitfire Boys, and they made Liverpool's first ever punk single, which as the 40th anniversary of punk's coming up, there's a lot of people talking about that right now. So
interesting. Now tell me, did you know anything about Scientology?
Well, funnily enough, I'd read a lot of William Burroughs books where he talked about it. He actually joined them and became a clear, which is a landmark if you're a Scientologist, because you're trying to clear your mind of all negative influences, or shall we say, you're trying to get rid of your reactive mind, which in Scientology is what they call it. Freud called it the subconscious. So imagine living without a subconscious. You're meant to be better off if you haven't got one. So that's what you're aiming for, and that's what Scientologists aim for.
Looking at Scientology now and the surrounding guard and wall around it, why is that?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I never call it a religion because it isn't. And if you ask me to say exactly what it is, I'm going to come out and say it's organized fraud. So if you are in charge of it, or if you're helping to keep it going, you've got to keep your secret. Right, so because if everyone knows you're a fraud, no one's going to come near you. So the reason why Scientology is the way it is and behaves the way it is simply to protect what they've got. Of course, in the age of the internet, that's getting more and more difficult to do.
What I find difficult to understand, Peter, and comprehend is the fact that the people who are in it appear to be incredibly intelligent people, and I don't understand why they have been got.
I understand what you mean, Pete. It's a myth to say that you've got to be gullible to join a cult, because even if you look at ex-Moonies or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-anybody's, they're not dumb, and certainly in Scientology, they don't claim to help people who have problems, although if you tell them you've got a problem, they will say they can help you. But that's not the main claim. Hubbard himself said, we want to help the able guy, make the able more able. So I don't know how that could actually work. 'Cause if you're able, you're able. You know, I mean, can you increase your ability to be able? I don't know. Maybe you can. But that's the whole thing. So they're not looking for people with problems specifically. They only want people who are, shall we say, already doing okay, but maybe have a problem in the area of whatever, finance, relationships, communication, you name it. Whatever problem you've got, they will tell you they can solve it for you.
Are you a thorn in their side, people like you who leave?
Oh, yes.
Have they tried to do anything to punish you for leaving?
Yeah, they've tried a lot of things, and there's a fellow that lives in England whose job seems to be to spy on my internet life and then report on it. And I've recently been involved in a court case where they said some things about me which were frankly untrue, so I decided to sue them for defamation, and I won the case.
Wow, that's a big step, isn't it?
Yeah, like most people don't win cases against Scientology because they try and keep them going and grind it out, and they use the court case to wear the person down. We did a couple of things, like we sued an individual rather than the Church of Scientology, but we knew full well that the Heavy Brigade would actually join in, and that's what they did. I mean, the case was in Ireland, and they sent people over from England every time we were in court.
Now, what about the stars, John Travolta, Tom Cruise? Why are they members of Scientology, in your opinion?
Okay, I actually don't know, to be totally honest. The rumours are flying all over the place, and the rumour is that, like in Scientology, one of the things you do is like you speak to a counsellor on a one-on-one level, except they record everything and film everything. So it's quite possible that Mr. Travolta and Mr. Cruise and a few others are giving away some lurid secrets. It's also possible they might not have done, but a lot of people who are like in the public eye don't want the private life broadcast all over the papers. So I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that Scientology might be blackmailing these people, but they've got a hold on them.
Does it cost a lot of money to be a Scientologist?
Can do. Oh my. It depends. Here's the funny thing, it's really like anything. The more money you've got, the more you'll spend. And it's the case with Scientology. The more money you've got, the more they'll take off you. So if you've got a lot, absolutely. I believe that Nancy Cartwright, who you probably know as the voice of Bart Simpson, regularly hands over millions, just as donations, not for anything in particular, but just to donate to them. That's pretty scary. I've also told that, people like Tom Cruise also donate millions. That Travolta's private jet was at the beck and call of the leader if he wanted to fly to some part of the world on a whim. So, yeah, I mean, it can cost a lot. There's an artist based in Los Angeles, Michael Pattinson by name, very good artist. He did everything that Scientology had to offer and spent about $500,000. Other people might spend less, others slightly more, it depends. But you could be you're certainly looking to spend a six-figure sum if you want to do everything that Scientology has to offer.
So what does Scientology offer? Is it a religion? Do we worship somebody?
What was your second question there?
Do we worship somebody?
Good question. They actually, in my opinion, worship money, because that's all they really care about. The bottom line is it's all about money. Now, Scientologists listening to this, if there are any allowed to listen to radio, they will be going, no, he's all wrong. We do this, and, we help this, and we help that. But that's all a smokescreen, and it's a well-established smokescreen to fool existing members into thinking that they're doing good. It's not a religion, in my opinion. They do talk about spirituality, but that's about all. With regards to God, they say, well, we don't talk about God because you can't really know God or see God. Some people obviously can and talk to him and maybe even see him. But they say, as God can't be scientifically proven to exist, we don't talk about God. And then they'll tell you, well, you can be a member of any religion and still a Scientologist because we're just studying knowledge. And they claim to be scientific. It's the least scientific thing you'd ever hear. But they claim to have that scientific thing. They absolutely, if you become a Scientologist and start studying, the first thing they tell you, they give you a thing called the Acceptable Guide to Student Behavior or something like that. And one of the things in there is you do not mix Scientology with other practices. And that's meant to mean any other religion, yoga, meditation, you name it. If it's not Scientology, once you become a Scientologist, you're not allowed to do it. Otherwise, you'll be in big trouble. So they say things, and then the actual practice is completely the opposite or so widely different. Not a religion, in my opinion, of course. If they want to call themselves a religion, I'm happy for them to do that.
Pete, how deep did you get into it?
Well, deep enough, I guess. I was involved for 7 years, and for the next 14 years after leaving, I didn't question anything they'd told me. So for a total of 21 years from getting involved, I believed that they were a force for good, that they were wonderful, that they were saving the world and could help people solve all their problems. Obviously not true. So they did a pretty good job on me. I was still functioning and able to hold a job and everything. I wasn't kind of harmed any specific way. Financially, what did I lose? I don't know, 20, 30,000, something like that. Certainly I gave up my job and my house and my car for them. Managed to keep hold of anything else I had just about. But here's an interesting thing. Like when you mean like a Scientologist who's been in for years, they'll have no knowledge of popular culture, like what was on TV, what music was in the charts, because they're not allowed to have access to any of that. So they have these huge blanks in their cultural knowledge, you might say.
What's life like as a Scientologist? How different are you to me?
I don't know. I'd say we're pretty similar, really. But I mean, it's a very, very good question, actually, because there are different levels of Scientologist. There's the brand new one who's kind of slightly suspicious, and he doesn't see anything to get his guard up, so he goes another step and then another step. Then you have like public Scientologists who are just doing the courses. Then you get like the staff member who is dedicated to, making sure you do the course and making sure there's a course to go to and all that kind of stuff. And then you get the serious ones who join the Sea Organization and sign a billion-year contract. So there are different levels. The thing is, the closer to the top you get, which is obviously going through those steps that I mentioned and joining the Sea Organization, and the nearer to the leader and the top of it, the more corrupt it actually gets. So it's a fantastic setup. It's like a machine in some ways that's designed to suck your money, anything else. Like if, for example, you don't have money, they encourage you to join staff and help them to save the world. Only like that doesn't happen. But it's well, what's the word I'm looking for? Well groomed, I suppose. It's a well-established and tried and tested machine for doing what it does. It works as it was intended to work.
Is the leader, the guy that created it, it's Hubbard, isn't it? Is he worshipped?
That's another good one, because they don't really worship anything or anybody, but every single Scientology organization has an office dedicated to him. Now, when I questioned it, is he coming back? They said, no, he's gone on to Target 2. He's gone to some other part of the universe to do it all over, to do it there. Now, he passed away in 1986, and then another fella took over. He willed it to a couple who very quickly became persona non grata, and this other guy basically assumed the power that was the leadership of Scientology, and that was a fella called David Miscavige. Now, his brother left some years ago. His father left recently and wrote a book called Ruthless, which was all about his son and how, what life was like working under him and how he sort of like changed as time went on. And I mean, he's like the ultimate dictator with all this power and all this control and all this money. Interestingly enough, when Hubbard died, he had $680 million in bankers' boxes in his bedroom, which is like, what would you need all that for? It's not for ice cream or petrol, is it? Now,
what about these palaces, these temples, these places they build?
Yeah, well, they usually choose a very nice building. I mean, I can think of a whole lot of lovely buildings in Liverpool. I mean, they'd probably like to buy the Liver building, and what they would do is they'd get all the so-called parishioners to contribute loads and loads of money, and then they buy the building. And I'm using Liverpool as an example, and thank God they're not in Liverpool, but they are in Manchester, where they bought this really huge old Victorian brewery. Once they've bought a building in any city in the world where they have, a presence, they then rent it back to the people that just gave you the money to buy it. So you give them the money to buy the building and sign it over to them, and then they rent it back to you. So there's a money-making thing going on there. They tend to choose like an iconic or a very nice architecturally designed building, but then they start fundraising more money from you to do the renovations and to bring it up to scratch and to make it look like the way they want it to. Recently done something like this in Hollywood, where they bought a movie studio. Supposedly, well, first of all, they bought the studio, then they raised money to do it all up, and it was opened only about, I think, 6 weeks ago or something. And the promise was that they were going to counter the negative media in the world with their own Scientology media production studio and blah, 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 blah. And the first video they've actually produced is a fundraiser trying to raise money to buy another one of these places. So it's just a huge joke. But that's what they do. So they're just taking everything from the few remaining members, because, I mean, I believe it's shrinking. I mean, I really do.
Now, tell me, did you see that TV documentary on it?
Which one?
There was one very good one just a while ago that was really quite dark, with about 4 people in it.
Alex Gibney one, Going Clear?
Yes, I think it was. That's right.
Yeah, they won Emmys, I think. Yeah, I did see it. It was pretty good. There was nothing. See, here's the thing, like you get a lot of cult apologists who say that you can't trust the word of ex-members. Well, okay, ex-members may have a certain slant on things, certainly, but to just discount everything they have to say just because they're ex-members, I don't think that's a very rational approach, because you're missing out a lot of anecdotal stuff, I mean, and some of that stuff is every time I hear horror stories from Scientology, I just can't believe it. So Alex's movie was based on factual stuff and also stories from ex-members. Just like we're doing, actually.
Yeah. Why do you feel the need to expose them?
Okay, that's a great one. When I realised after 21 years that I'd been conned, my next thought was, oh my God, those poor kids who are still in it, and anybody else they might get. So the reason I do what I do is basically to hopefully get people who are in to wake up and realise, hey guys, look at this. This is not what you think it is. And also to keep, new people from getting involved. So, I've organised a few conferences on an international level with a lot of help. And we've produced a lot of videos on YouTube that people can watch. And hopefully we'll just warn enough people that, the numbers reduce, and hopefully we'll reach some kind of a tipping point where it can't maintain itself any longer and disappears up its own backside.
It's Radio City 2 and Radio City Talk. I'm talking to Peter Griffiths about being a Scientologist, an ex-Scientologist. Pete, I've got to ask, when you wanted to leave, did you tell them or just go? What happened? Talk us through it.
Well, I actually left twice. The first time was terrible because, see, my ex-wife and I were both staff members, and then one day they turned round and said that because she'd worked as a psychiatric nurse, she couldn't be a Scientology staff member. I don't know if you know this, but they've got an absolute down on anything to do with psychology, psychiatry, even normal medicine to some degree, And because she'd worked as a psychiatric nurse, they said she couldn't be on staff. So as a couple, all of a sudden, we were both doing it, and then suddenly there's just me doing it. And I'll be totally honest with you, we were not getting paid. We just had a child, and we were struggling to feed ourselves, never mind kids. It was terrible. So I decided that I'd leave as well. And as soon as I told them that I wanted to leave, it's like everything changed, you know. You can imagine like a soccer team, and one of the players goes, you know, I've had enough of you guys, I want to leave. You can imagine how they'd all suddenly look at him and go, huh, right. And it was like that, only worse, because in Scientology, there's a specific way of dealing with someone, and if they think you're a traitor, like, nobody will talk to you. So in that dreadful atmosphere, I had to try and push myself through the Scientology way of leaving, which is to work his way through this form called a staff leaving routing form. What I didn't know at the time was that every single step on that form is designed to get you someone to stay, as you can probably imagine. So it was pretty tough, and I got as far as I could with that, and it took like, oh wow, how long did it take? Certainly more than like 3 or 4 months, and I'm still there. And my wife said, look, I can't stand it here. We've no money, we've no nothing. I want to go where we can get some jobs and do something. She was pregnant again, so that was an extra pressure. So in the end, we just planned to escape one night. We didn't tell anybody. We asked her dad to send us the money, and he did, and we bought train tickets. This was all happening in Sunderland, and we were escaping to Cumbria, which isn't too far away. But when you've got, you know, no train tickets and a pregnant wife and a child, you know, you need some kind of transport. We sold our car. So one night we just sort of escaped into the night, and we were terrified. You know, you watch these movies about people escaping from anywhere, and it was like, just like that. And if you talk to any people who were in Scientology and have left, who escaped, they've all got like similar stories to tell. The second time I got out was a lot easier. They kicked me out, so that wasn't too bad. So,
could you go back again if you wanted?
Oh, hey, that's another good question. If I had loads of money, I'm pretty sure they'd accept me back with open arms.
Right. Interesting. Tell me, how big is Scientology in England?
Not a clue. I think the census claims something like over 2,000 members. Right. I would doubt that very much. I believe that the membership is shrinking, simply because of all these things, all these stunts that they try and pull, and the continual demand for money. But here's another thing, like over the years that it's been going, like L. Ron Hubbard wrote certain books, and these are like the Scientology scriptures, and you got to buy them. But they've been reissued since he died on 3 separate occasions, and the members are expected to like ditch their old ones and buy the new one, right, which has been improved with the correct placing of colons and commas, and you wouldn't believe this stuff, but they buy the new books and say, "Oh yeah, they're way better than the old ones." It's unbelievable, you know. In the level of the scam is just mind-boggling.
Pete, tell me, when you go to these big meetings, what actually happens at them? Are there prayers?
Oh gosh, no. Normally what happens, if it's an official, like, Scientology international event, first of all, you wait for hours and hours and hours, and these days, I mean, you've got to be invited and have cards and ID, and you have to be pre-approved, and then you basically sit for anything up to 6 hours listening to how wonderful Scientology is doing all over the world. And what they'll do is they'll send film crews, like, for example, like they came to Dublin one time and filmed Scientologists looking like they're busy and active and, you know, collecting litter or handing out leaflets, things that they don't actually do, but they do just for the film. Mm-hmm. And then they show the film at the big event, and everyone applauds and cheers and claps, you know. And in the Dublin one was hilarious, because the leader of Scientology said that since they'd handed out these leaflets, there'd been an 86% drop in drug-related crime. And of course, this is absolutely untrue. I don't even know where he got this figure from. I contacted the police, and they said, well, actually, it is down by 7%. But everyone just laughed, and it was a big thing in the papers how they'd said this, you know, because it's like, wow, even Portugal didn't get that, you know? So having done all that, having watched how wonderful Scientology is doing all over the world, you'll be sat there thinking, oh, well, it must just be my place that's doing really badly. The rest of the world's doing so good. Oh, I must work harder, you know. And then finally, when it's over, and the other thing as well, every time some announcement's made, you got to stand up and clap like crazy. I mean, so you leave those events with really sore hands because you're clapping like a maniac, right? And then you just don't leave, because in some of them, the doors get locked and people have to sort of like, almost like, channeled past what they call in Scientology registrars, who try to sell you the latest thing, and failing that, they'll just try to get a donation from you to stop people like me from doing what I do, which is just speaking the truth, basically.
What are the views of Scientologists on NHS and doctors and things like that?
Overall, they absolutely can't stand medicine because they believe that most illnesses are caused by the mind. They believe that Scientology and Dianetics have the answers to how the mind really works and that they can cure everything, and there'll be no need for something like that. Factually, Scientologists actually die from not getting the treatment that they should get, and I'm talking simple stuff. They believe, I think L. Ron Hubbard said at some point that the spirit alone can heal the body, which is fine, unless it doesn't, and you need some medical intervention. They generally do not like anything organized. They have a list that they call antisocial people and suppressive persons, and as well as including the entire medical profession, it also includes journalists, the media, the FBI, the CIA, the IRS, basically anybody in power. So the Scientologists see themselves as like some kind of like freedom fighters against a corrupt world. Of course, the truth is that, oh my God, the Scientology world would be just a nightmare, But, they generally, if it came down to it and they're in an accident, then yes, they would get standard treatment. But if they had a choice, I know of cases, like, for example, one of the things they do in Scientology is a touch assist, where they actually poke you and ask you to feel the finger that's poking you. And they say that by doing this, it puts you, the being, back into communication with your body. So I heard this story of a guy who had a motorcycle accident right outside his own house. He was in such a bad way, but what they did was one of these touch assists for 6 hours before, the people with a bit of sense said, do you know something, I think we need to call an ambulance. They finally called the ambulance, and the ambulance people were just looking at them going, why the hell didn't you call us? This guy's in a bad way. And they've been doing this like touch assist thing for 6 hours. So, the guy could have died, that's how crazy it gets. I always say, you can believe what you like. And I mean that absolutely and sincerely. But when that belief influences your behavior and that's detrimental, then no, I'm sorry, the line gets drawn.
Do you think Scientology will ever come to an end?
Please. I hope it does. Having said that, like in Russia some years ago, like they tried to ban all the books, and I'm going, no, don't ban them. Let people read them and see how crazy they are. That's the way to go. I'd like to think that it gets so small it can't maintain itself. But, as you correctly pointed out, they're buying masses of property. So they're going to have this like huge pot of wealth and property. I think they're probably dipping into it even now, but it's really hard to say. It's hard to say. Sometimes some big thing happens that makes me think it's going to be over in a few days, and they keep on going. That's been...
Sorry.
Well...
No, I was just...
That's been going on for years. Every time that they've got a crisis, you think, oh, that's the end, and it isn't. It just keeps going. So,
what's their views on sexuality?
Well, that's an interesting one. Normally, if you take your average straight person who thinks that sex is a man and a woman in a missionary position, like for Scientologists, that would be the accepted form of sex, and anything else would be perverted or deviant. It certainly wouldn't be acceptable. However, those levels I mentioned when you first get in and you become a public and then a staff and then a Sea Org member, the higher up that ladder you go, the more strained that becomes. And if you're a Sea Org member and you're a girl and get pregnant, they basically give you a choice. You know, you can keep your job or you can leave. And what they're saying is, you know, okay, for the good of what we're doing, you need to abort your baby. Now, there's a lot of cases in the States about this very thing. And I mean, to give anyone that, you know, that choice, but they're so convinced that what they're doing is right that it's happened probably thousands of times. So they try to discourage sexual activity, normal sexual activity, and the normal's in inverted commas. Anything else, they've got an absolute downer on it. Even masturbation. I mean, and you're meant to confess all this as well, you know. There's been cases where somebody's statistics for the week were down, which means that they didn't sell X number of books or whatever, you know, whatever their particular job is. And they interview them, and they'd even say, well, have you been masturbating? You know, as though that would affect their performance at work. You know, it is absolutely bizarre. And you can read all this on the internet. You know, I mean, if you just Google Scientology attitudes to sex, on one level it's actually entertaining, but on another level it's like, whoa, where does this lot come from, you know?
Are there people thrown out of Scientology that are lost after they've lost their...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially when they get older. Like normally a person might reach retirement age and retire and, you know, live with the grandchildren, but in Scientology that's not going to happen. A lot of people have just got so old and sick and they won't go to hospital and they've just died in terrible circumstances. If they can still walk, they very often, in the States anyway, get given $500, just told to F off, you know, really? To put it bluntly. I believe the same things happened in the UK down at St. Hill, which is like where they have the Sea Organisation base. You don't have a retirement plan in Scientology, and you will devote the best years of your life. You know, say if you get it at the age of 20 and they throw you out at 65, 45 years of your life's just gone down the drain. You've got no social security record to speak of, so you won't get anything even, you know, from the government. It's horrible. And they don't care. That's the bottom line, is they absolutely don't care, you know.
Pete, to finish off, what do you want people to take from this interview?
Anything. I think the most important thing is that all this information is freely available. You know, I'm guessing that people have access to the internet, but if you don't, I'm pretty sure it's in libraries, and libraries have computers. Find out for yourself. Don't listen to it. Don't believe me. I'm just some bloke talking. But find out for yourself. It's all there, and then make up your own mind. Like I can see through the Scientology lies and what they say and how they try and attract people. But it's up to each individual to make his own decision. Ultimately, that's why I say don't ban the books. Let people read them. You know, they're fun on one level. So yeah, you know, if anyone was actually thinking of becoming a Scientologist, think twice. Please think twice. And I think ultimately, like, I don't regret my time in Scientology, but I would certainly never do it again. That's a fact.
Pete Griffiths, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And if you are a Scientologist, we would love to hear your side of the story. Or are you not listening to the radio because you're not allowed to? It's Radio City 2 and Radio City Talk. That was fascinating. We've been having lots of people just ringing up saying thank you so much for doing that interview over the Scientologist. It's still so deep, isn't it? It's still so wow.